Hey guys, I just thought I'd mention again some ways in which buyers specific steps to take in order to go through the transaction here in Texas anyway. I know Texas, we seem to do things a little bit different than the rest of the nation, but it's important to understand some of the things that we do here that you may not be used to from other states, or if you're a first-time home buyer. Anyway, so the first thing to do when you're thinking about getting a new home is you want to get, first of all, approved with a lender. It's important that you choose a lender that is easily accessible, easily spoken to, and I even recommend some of my guys here locally. They do an amazing job, but I do not recommend the big guys for several reasons. So I don't recommend the big banks because you can't get a hold of the same person. It's not a personalized situation. And I'll tell you, when you're buying a home, you want to be able to reach your lender immediately, especially your realtor, because the reason why we need to be able to reach them is in case something changes. We need to talk to them about closing costs, about funding. There's several forms here we have to fill out in order to be sure we get specific disclosures from them. So we want to have we want to be able to reach them specifically. Anyway, so the first thing to do is get approved with a lender. If you're not familiar with any lenders, please reach out to any of the realtors that you're considering working with. We have a list of them, and we even have our favorites. I usually recommend the people I use, as well as my other clients and the experiences that they've had. So anyway, the other thing that I recommend as far as buyers' steps to home purchase is go drive the subdivisions that you're considering purchasing from. Now, why is that important? Well, you need to figure out if that's the area where you want to live. Is it the shopping that you want? Is it the post office that you want? Are the streets in the condition you want? Are the houses maintained, or is that not a big deal to you? Do you want no subdivision? So you want to be sure that you're running through these subdivisions or these areas where you're thinking about purchasing so that you can see if it's an area you're going to feel comfortable living in. Once you've done these two things, it's real important at this point, if not before either one of these, to find yourself a realtor. Now, it can be a broker, it can be a realtor, but there are differences. So please be aware there's a difference between a real estate agent and a real estate realtor and a real estate realtor broker. So you've got all different kinds of stuff. Different things are based, each of these are based on different ethics. And you want to be sure that you are getting the best ethical representation that you can get from my perspective, right? So I'm not only a realtor, but I'm also a broker. So it's important to find that. Then you get with your realtor and you find out, okay, this is my budget. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, let's just say, a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath home. I want to live in these specific zip codes or these specific subdivisions. Here in Texas, just so you know, we have, like where I work in probably 12 zip codes. So in your area, it may be that it's only one zip code, but be aware of that because we want to be sure we're providing the service that you need. That's what representation's all about, by the way. When you have a realtor work for you, you're actually having them work for you to the betterment of your needs. My needs are not taken into effect or even into account. What you need is what is important for me as your realtor broker in order to get your best deal. Okay, so first of all, we start doing a search. We start sending you information on properties. You let us know which ones you like. Once we do that, then we schedule a day where you can have time with us as well as us with you. So it depends, right? So our busiest times of the day are evenings and weekends, which is normally the time that you're off, right? So that becomes our busiest time. So you want to schedule that in advance, especially if you're dealing with a real estate broker or realtor that's good, because normally they're very busy. So you want to be sure that you get in there, be sure that they're able to spend 3 to 4 hours with you going through all of those homes that you like. And if it's just one home that you go, hey, this is the one, then you want to get in there and you want to probably spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour in that home so that you can see if it meets all of your criteria. So once we've got a home, now becomes a big deal for us as your realtors, brokers. We are starting our negotiations. We're doing our comps to determine what the real pricing should be. If there's any leeway in the market for us to negotiate, maybe closing costs, them taking care of some of your issues. So there's all different, there's probably in our Texas real estate contract, there's probably 75 to 100 different things we can negotiate. And you want to be sure you've got representation on your side, because if you don't, then if you go with the person that's selling the home, they're going to write that contract up to the benefit of their seller. They're the one they're representing. So be aware of that. That's a big deal here. And another thing we don't have in the state of Texas, which they do in many other states, is dual representation. We have intermediary, where we can actually be the person that talks these to the seller and to the buyer without actual representation, which personally I don't like at all. Some people do, some people don't. But in my brokerage, we don't do that. I don't feel like we can give you the right type of representation, representing both sides. So anyway, we don't do intermediary. Some people do. And if they do it ethically, then it's just fine. But realize when you do that, you actually cannot get professional advice any longer. You're getting someone that's going to take your negotiations to that other person, and that person's going to bring their negotiations. So it's a little bit different. And some brokers have a ton of different agents working for them. So they'll assign different agents and they'll get that person's professional opinion, but the broker is still the one in the middle. So, because in the state of Texas, as a broker, we're responsible for all of our real estate agents and realtors' behaviors, everything they do. So, FYI, once we make an offer, we get and hopefully get an accepted offer. In the state of Texas, we have 3 days per the contract to deliver 2 checks, or really 1 check, for 2 reasons. The first reason is what's called an option period. In the option period, when you purchase a property, you get this time to go in and do a home inspection. Let's say in the home inspection, they find that the AC isn't working properly. Then you want to bring an air conditioning person in, find out what's going on with that. Or let's say, hey, during the inspection, we found the foundation to be off a little bit. You need a foundation inspection or possibly a roof inspection. So during this option period, in the contract, we negotiate time for you in order to get all these inspections done. Usually it's a very nominal amount of money, but it's for 7 to 10 days, depending on what's going on in the market. So it's super, super important that once you get this accepted contract, that we start getting inspections going immediately. But to get back to your 2 amounts that you're going to be depositing, and really probably only one, because it goes to the title company. One is option fee. The other is called earnest money. Earnest money is usually about 1% of the sales price that you're going to deposit with the title company, so that you're saying, hey, I'm a serious buyer. I'm going to put 1% of my purchase price down. They're going to hold it while we go through our home inspections. Once we get through the home inspections, there's 2 things that can happen. One, we negotiate, or you're fine with the findings during the option period, and you move on. That money then goes towards your purchase of the property at closing. So you didn't lose that money. It now goes towards your purchase. Let's say you found there were so many problems, we couldn't negotiate it, and you said, hey, I can't own this home. I have to walk away. Well, if that particular thing happens, then what happens for the overall contract, so that you are not in breach of contract, they get to keep that option period money. So let's say it's $250, $500. they keep that money and you terminate the contract. The seller gets to keep that money. It's been taken off the market for that time. It goes back on the market and we start looking for another home. But if you decide to purchase it, so the option fee money and the earnest money both go towards your closing. Now, after we get through the option period, you are immediately going to be getting with your lender. And of course, we as realtors are going to remind you, it's time to order your appraisal. The appraisal can take anywhere from 7 to 14 working days. So it's super important that as soon as you get through that inspection period, that you order your appraisal, so that they can get on the schedule and get into the home and appraise the value of the property for the lender. It's not for you, it's for the lender. Excuse me. To validate that what you're paying for it is a good loan. So the appraisal's next. Now, we have another addendum that we put to the contract that's called a third-party financing addendum. And that addendum has a time period on it. And that time period protects your earnest money before the end of that time. So, for instance, we got through the option period. Let's say, and I've had this happen, so it was a terrible situation, but things happen, right? We were 20 days into the contract, everything was going well, and all of a sudden the gentleman lost his job. His financing fell through. Well, per this third-party financing addendum, we had a 25-day financing addendum deadline, and he was able to terminate because he no longer could get his financing, and he got his earnest money back. So there's ways to protect your money if in case, you're concerned about something. We can always negotiate days. But it also helps to protect you. But after that 25 days, if anything should happen, if you lose your job, if you decide I don't want to buy it, I've actually had people do that in the middle of a deal. We had that happen 2 months ago. We had a listing and we had everything under control. We were into the financing part. The appraiser had called me the day before, and all of a sudden the buyer says, I don't want to buy it. Well, there's no reason for them not to buy it. They can't get out of the contract. So now the seller has up to 2, possibly 3 remedies. But one of them is to accept the earnest money that they deposited and put it back on the market and move on. And normally that's the way we do it because that's why the earnest money is put up. Anyway, so option fee, earnest money, option period, inspections, then we've got a third-party financing addendum. During that third-party financing addendum, we're trying to get the appraiser in there to get an appraisal of the property like we talked about. So, during this time or during the option period, you also want to make some phone calls to get several things. First of all, are you in a windstorm area? Now, I know this is throughout the nation, but specifically here in Texas, where I'm down in the Galveston County area, just south of Houston. I'm 20 miles out of Galveston Island. So down here, you have to have windstorm insurance. You have to have homeowners insurance. And depending on where you live in the flood areas, and what I mean by flood areas, there's 3 different floodable designations. So one is AE, that is the most risk home that would flood. The second is what's called an X flood zone, but it's a 500-year flood zone. So that's one that if you're familiar with the area, we had a Hurricane Ike and we had Hurricane Harvey. So if you're in an X500, you probably flooded during that time. So it's not that it's mandatory flood insurance, but it's highly recommended. And let me tell you, even in the regular X flood zones, the least risk, it's so inexpensive, you should still buy it. I'm here to tell you, we had during Harvey 53.5 inches in our backyard. Thank God we did not flood, but it came to our front patio. It was right there. If anybody had tried to drive through our streets to do any type of rescues, it would have come right into our home. So be aware of those things. These are 3 things you have to have potentially, but highly recommended. So you want to shop your insurances during the option period. Of course, we're going to negotiate any repairs during the option period or seller's contributions. Now, what's seller's contribution? Seller's contributions are monies that we ask the seller to pay for part of your closing costs as a buyer, so that it reduces your out-of-pocket expense, so that when after you close, you've got that money that you can go do the repairs on. Now, a lot of it depends on what your client, what each one of you may need. As a broker, it depends on how I negotiate that based on my buyer's needs. So do they want a price reduction? Do they want the sellers to do the repairs? Or possibly, are they even mandatory? Because if it's a VA loan, there's certain things that you have to have done. If it's an FHA loan, certain things you have to have done. If it's a conventional loan, how are you going to break that down? There's so many things to consider. So please, even if it's not us, get a real estate agent, realtor, broker, somebody representing you in your transaction. You can lose so much money. One of the reasons why I got in the business is because my previous life, I actually lost my husband and I got taken. I lost probably $15,000 to $20,000 because I wasn't represented. And I'm here to tell you that one of the reasons why I got in this business is to be sure everybody I know and love will never have to go through that again. So anyway, there's that. Then we start looking at home warranties. So do you want a home warranty? Most of the time in your contract offers, we put that in there for you to be sure for the first year you've got a home warranty in case something should happen that was unforeseen. So it's important that you're aware of that as well, because it will impact what they're paying for you. You want to once we start getting everything together, we know it's appraised, we need to start getting packed. Now, here's the thing. As a new buyer, it's very stressful, especially if you're with kids, if you're single mom or single dad, or if you're not with kids and it's your first time moving in, it gets overwhelming. Here's what I tell everybody. Don't panic. Pack 7 boxes a day. Doesn't matter how big or how small. If you do 7 a day, within 10 days, it's amazing how quickly you will have everything packed. So just don't panic. It all works out and you'll get in there on time. Then we want to schedule your utilities. So it's very important, about 3 days before closing, you're going to get a closing disclosure from your lender. Now, you'll want to share that with us brokers or agents, because we go back through the contract to be sure all of your closing costs meet what the contract says. The lender's looking at certain things, the title company's looking at certain things, but we as agents are looking specifically at the contract to be sure all of the contract negotiations are the way they should be. And I'm here to tell you, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody ever means it, but you don't want to get to the closing table and find it out then or even after closing, because for whatever reason, everybody didn't sit with you at the closing table. That's a whole nother issue. I think that all realtors should be with their clients at closing to be sure that there's no issues. Some agents don't make it. Some brokers don't make it. Some lenders don't make it. But I'm here to tell you, when you work with us, the lender's there, I'm there, and we ensure everything goes clean and easy for you as much as possible on the day of closing. And here's the last thing. Well, not the last thing. One of the last things you do before closing is you go do what's called a final buyer walkthrough. That means an hour or two before closing, you go to the home, you walk the property, you turn on the water, you look at all the windows, you open all the sliders, you do everything. You look in the corners. If you had repairs that were supposed to have been done, you go look at that. You ensure everything's right. Because let me tell you, I've had clients say, hey, I don't have time before, let's do it, a couple of days ahead of time. I always tell them I'm absolutely fine with you doing that. However, let me give you the example of what happened to me and one of my clients. When we were going to go to closing, we happened to do the walkthrough an hour and a half before closing. And as we walked into the house, the entire ceiling was pouring down water. The hot water heater had busted. and it was destroying all of their hardwoods. It was unbelievable. Now, if we had done the walkthrough 2 days before that and closed and signed all the paperwork, guess what would have happened? The new buyer, the new owner, would have made a homeowner's insurance claim, and they would have been out of a home until all these repairs were completed. Now, what ended up happening is it was so substantial that they didn't even buy the home, and they got out of everything. They got their earnest money back and everything because it was out of their control and it was out of the seller's control, but within the contract, we have some protections. Anyway, very, very important you do your final buyer walkthrough. And just so you know, what we do is I've had several clients say, hey, I'm out of town, I can't go there. I always tell them, no problem. If you're going to do where you can't do an hour to 2 hours before closing, I'm going to go. We're going to walk it together via FaceTime so that you see the condition of your home before we close. It's super, super important. Be sure people are working to protect you. Schedule the closing. We try to do all that to your schedule. Then once it's funded, meaning everything, all the monies have gotten to the title company. The title company calls us, the realtors. We let our buyers know, I've got the keys. Congratulations, the home is yours. Then what we do is y'all are then given the keys and you are ready to go. So hopefully by that time you've gotten all, and we help remind you of these things. Do you have your moving ready? Do you have all of your boxes ready? Did you need a lease back? Did you need a couple of extra days on your apartment or the rental you were in or in the home that you sold? We have people all the time that sell a home and buy a home. Well, how do you do that? Well, us realtors, we're very familiar on how to handle that and take good care of our clients. Anyway, I've got a whole 3-page buyer's steps to home purchase that I'd be happy to share with you. Please make comments, hit the subscribe button. I look forward to hearing from you. And by the way, we're never too busy for any of your referrals, and keep your thoughts on things above. Talk soon. Bye.